Today I'm going to show you how Carey uses electronic drum pads with his acoustic setup. That's coming up. What's up? Justin here. Welcome to 65 Drums, the place to keep on top of all things E-drum related. Hope you guys are all having an amazing day. So we're breaking down Carey's drum set in this video. The first video in the series was on Peart's drum set, how he uses electronic drums in his whole epic acoustic setup. It's a really cool video if you want to go check it out. I'll link it in the description below. But today we're breaking down Carey's drum set. He's probably most famous for being the drummer of the band Tool, and here's his drum set right here. Let's jump right into it. Right off the bat, you can see there's a lot of different elements here. It looks more complicated than it actually is though. So let's jump right into it with this pad way over here by itself to the left. That's a Roland Handsonic. The model number is the HPD 15. I believe it's the original version. This is a very powerful hand percussion pad from the company Roland. It's a lot of fun to play. I've played this one and the current version. They're both great. This has a lot of different zones on it. Some of them are very large, like the ones near the front of the pad, and some of them are very small. Each one of those zones can be assigned a different sound. There's also some plastic strips on the right and left side of the pad that you can use to change how the kit sounds. Also, there's a beam of light on the front of the pad, and if you break that beam by waving your hand over it, you can trigger a sound, like wind chimes or whatever else you want to assign to it. I believe it also has MIDI, so you can plug it into your laptop and trigger whatever sounds you want on there. The pad is very sensitive, it's pressure sensitive, and I believe you can do pitch changes just by holding down and pressing on any one of those individual zones. Now moving on to the middle right of this drum set is the Korg wave drum. He actually talked about it in one of his in-depth interviews of his acoustic set. He said, "I still have an old Korg wave drum, one of the big toilet seat looking things. I like the sound of it. It has more of an analog-y sound than the newer versions they come out with. I have so many sounds programmed into this one, and we are doing a lot of the older tunes, so I have the original one." Now I totally understand the situation, because as a band, if you've got these iconic sounds from different albums you've done, why go through all the trouble just to buy a newer version of that pad or that keyboard that might be slightly more sensitive, but then you got to move all the samples over to that one and program that one and figure out how to use it. You know, sometimes using the older piece of gear just makes more sense because it saves you time. And that's why you'll see some bands cling to really old gear, because it just works and it has all the sounds that they need for certain songs. Moving on to the rest of his set, I should probably mention that he used to use vintage Simmons SDX pads, but right now his pad of choice is the Mandala set of pads. Now these pads might look like Simmons pads, but they're actually quite different. Each one of these pads are MIDI devices in and of themselves. They actually run via a USB cord straight into your laptop. He's famous for using these pads, and he actually talked about it in a few of his interviews. The Mandala pads are the ones that Vince DeFranco made for me. The ones I have are prototypes, the purple pads. I just run a program called Battery and I load my samples onto that. Just hit a button and it switches to the next song. It's really easy to get around with. So what he's talking about here is that he's got different sounds assigned to each one of these pads. And actually, depending on where you hit on the pad, it actually changes that sound. The great thing is he just presses an arrow key on his laptop and all the sounds on all the pads are instantly changed to something else, so that it's perfect for the exact song that he's playing. Here's another quote from a different interview. "The beauty of the Mandalas is that it knows the center from the edge, like where you're hitting it. You can apply parameters to whatever you want, be it panning, opening filters, pitch changes. It's up to your imagination. It doesn't sound cheesy, electronic. It makes it sound more natural because even with a real drum, you hit it from the center to the edge and the pitch does change slightly. It goes higher and higher as you get closer to the rim. And you can program that into these pads. You can mimic a real drum and do it really subtly, but the beauty is that you can go crazy with it and make it very extreme." These Mandala pads are actually pretty darn expensive. You wouldn't necessarily think it just by looking at them. It's just a rubber pad with a USB cord coming out of them. How expensive could they be? But they're actually over $300 a piece. If you buy 3 of them, it's $1,000, and he's using 7 of them. So he's using about $2,000 worth of Mandala pads. But they do the job. Apparently they can take a beating because they're standing up to the rigors of the road. And yeah, the good stuff, unfortunately, always seems to cost a lot of money. Believe it or not, we've actually covered all the pads that he's using here. It kind of looks complicated when you just glance at it for the first time looking at a photo, but he's not using a bunch of different brands. He's just using a lot of one brand and then 2 other pads. The only other electronic element I think I might be able to see is a Fat Cat trigger pedal there on the floor, just like Peart uses. But other than that, we've covered this entire drum set. He's using Mandala pads, and then a Korg wave drum and a Roland Handsonic. This kind of segues us into what kind of sounds does he use in the first place. he really leans heavily on world percussion sounds and then some electronic and synth sounding sounds. So for example, one time I was watching a video of him doing a drum solo. With his right hand, he was playing all these, big Asian drums that sound really cool. But with his left hand, he was playing a lot of electronic and synth sounds. But he's combining them, and for some reason, they kind of mesh together and it just works. And he made a really good observation. The great thing about using electronic pads is that if he had bought all those big Asian and African drums and just piled them around him, that drum set would have been freaking massive. But because he's using these electronic pads, he just presses a button, all the samples for the exact song he's playing are loaded. He plays that one song, he presses the next button, and all the sounds change for the samples that he needs for the song after that one. So not only does he save a lot of space, but two, he adds to the number of sounds he can cram into every single set. With a studio, it doesn't matter. You can painstakingly record yourself one day playing a djembe, and then a congo, bongo, and then go get a drum from here and a drum from that country, and you can just painstakingly record all that. With a live set, you need to be able to access all those songs right away. So that's the breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If there are different drum pads that I missed in this breakdown, let me know down in the comments below. I hope you guys all have an amazing day, and I'll see you in a few.